Take it easy. Take it easy.
All right, everybody, welcome in to another episode of the Easy Approach. As always, I am Nate, and as always, I'm joined by Tony and Canaan.
Yeah, happy to be here and glad that you guys are joining us as well. I know you're not joining us for the live, but for clarity's sake, this is actually live. So if you're listening to this on the podcast normally, come join us for the next one, because from now on, not only will you see our pretty faces with the new video that we have going, but every episode will have an actual live show. We'll still continue to post these just like we normally have. So you'll have the audio version on Spotify. But yeah, the live show, that's where it's at, especially if you have questions or if you want to call us out on some stuff we may or may not actually believe.
That's right. You don't have to send an angry email anymore. You can send angry messages we can read in real time.
That's right.
Real time. We are, as a part of this live stream, we just recorded a previous episode over the last hour on modern manhood metrics. That was funny. And a good talk. And we're moving into a totally different topic right now. And here it is. We are reacting and rating in terms of overrated or underrated Christian trends. Christian trends. So things that get really popular in the Christian sphere, we are rating them. Overrated would mean, I think all of us know what the word overrated means. Like, people view this as too important or too essential or even just better than it actually is. And underrated would be, we don't appreciate this thing enough. This is one of the newer formats we've been experimenting with as a way of just like live reacting to things. And so I prepared a little list here. Tony and Canaan don't know necessarily what is coming on this list. And we're all going to be reacting. Overrated or underrated? Are you gentlemen ready?
I'm ready.
As always.
All right, here we go. The Daniel fast. Overrated.
What is the Daniel fast again?
Or underrated?
This
What is the Daniel fast?
That Daniel in the Bible ate. What does it consist of?
Yes. So the Daniel fast, originally, this is in the book of Daniel, when Daniel and a handful of other like people in like the royal line were exiled from the southern kingdom of Judah, from Jerusalem. They're taken away to Babylon. And they were taken away in like waves. And so the elites, like the ones that were from the line of David and then like the court and stuff like that, they were taken away first, like the rich and the important and stuff like that. And Daniel is in that group. And so the practice for Babylon is to take the elites from a culture they conquered and then try to assimilate those elites, the ones that are really intelligent and have a lot of ability. They assimilate them into their own court. And so Daniel and, those like him, those around him, we're trying to figure out how to navigate this. And basically, they're being offered all of these super fancy foods, and many of them would not have been in line with the Torah, with kosher eating laws in the Torah. They're being offered all these fancy foods, and they basically say, we're not going to eat any of this stuff. We're only going to eat stuff that we're allowed to eat. And basically, it boiled down to what we now call the Daniel fast. They took it a step farther and then went as far as to go, we're only going to eat vegetables and water. Like, that's the basic idea. They cut out a huge amount of things. And then the idea in the story, okay, you know what? I'm not going to go any farther than that. That is the Daniel fast. Like, sometimes what we do today is we're like, okay, it's in the Bible. It's a fast. So it must be good for you. I'm going to eat the way Daniel and his friends ate. And so that's like, let's see, what's the stuff? It's like vegetables, just vegetables and water. Daniel talks about it, I think, at the end of the book. It's like no pleasant food, no meat, no wine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the end of the fast, things go really, really well for Daniel and them. Like, they're healthier and so on and so forth. So Daniel fast. Have you guys known anyone who's done the Daniel fast?
I've heard of it. I probably have tried it at some point in the past. I'm sure my wife has probably done it, or somebody that we know has done it. I'm going to say overrated, personally. At least I pulled up a list of foods that are the modern Daniel fast. Maybe people are actually doing the actual biblical one, but the modern one is fruits and vegetables, whole grains, which includes brown rice, oats, quinoa, barley, legumes, which is beans, nuts and seeds, and, of course, water. I don't know. At least for me, I'm going to say overrated.
Look, my doctor would be very happy if my diet reflected what you just listed, Canaan.
Yeah.
I want the meat. Give me the meat.
All right. So with that being said, I will admit that nutrition is definitely the difficult side of the coin on a healthy fitness journey for me. Like it's difficult for me to track my food. It's difficult for me to suppress my natural foodie nature. I love good food. I love decadent foods. And so with that being said, I do think that there is a place for fasting in general. I do think that it is a part of the Christian lifestyle. I like to give this context. If you've already been watching this live show, you heard it in the last episode. This is not a podcast for only Christians. We highly encourage anyone to be a part of this. And whenever you've been exposed to the Christian lifestyle, whenever you're just interested, you're an outsider looking in, wanting to learn more, or maybe you were a Christian and you don't consider yourself one anymore. Me personally, I'm very excited about those people, especially. Please join us, be a part of these conversations. I do think fasting has its place. The Daniel fast specifically, there's different ones, I think that fasting needs to be very careful and moderated and not just blind belief that everything's going to be okay because I did something that I felt like I was supposed to do. And so with that being said, I think it's actually overrated as well. I think that fasting does have a high risk of performative. If I do this thing, good things are going to happen. I personally in my life, I've seen too much. And this is someone who's done a lot of fastings in the past, been around a lot of fastings, and man, I've seen it abused one too many times. Sometimes in ways that aren't that big of a deal. It just affects that person, But I just seen it miscommunicated, misplaced, mishandled, and that grieves me. It has value, but I do think it's overrated.
Yeah, I'm gonna come in on the overrated. Not in terms of fasting. We did this recently where we ranked spiritual disciplines, and I actually ranked fasting pretty decently high. But the Daniel fast, I'm gonna go. I wish I could give this a higher level of overrated. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan at all. And the reason I'm not a fan is because of how I read the narrative in Daniel. In the narrative in Daniel, the whole thing is they can eat, like the narrative sets you up where they can eat a nutritional diet that will set them up to succeed in this new environment.
Yeah.
But it will require them to compromise on the laws that Yahweh told them. Or they can eat a bunch of crap that is not going to give them what they need. It's not going to give them the energy or the presence of mind to be like sharp and on point and able to do what they need to do in this new environment. And so the narrative sets you up like, are you going to trust this or are you going to trust this, Daniel and company? And Daniel and company say, no, we're going to trust Yahweh, even if it means we eat nothing good. And we don't eat any of the things the body needs, and we just eat vegetables and water. And then at the end of this period, it says that Daniel and company were somehow sharper and more intelligent and more well-spoken at the end of the period than they were at the beginning. And even more than all the rest of the people in the court who had been eating all this other stuff. So the narrative presents you with this picture of not if you're eating these things will make you smarter and healthier. And if you're eating these other things, it'll make you dumb. The emphasis is not on the food. The emphasis is on them saying, we'll trust God even if it doesn't make any sense. And then God basically sustains them anyway. So to take that and go, it's the food.
It's the food.
It's the food. They found the secret, like
very out of context.
They found the right food, and that made them smarter and healthier. I don't think that's the point at all. And I'm going to come right on the edge of this and throw out one more, because these are, like, in my mind, right like this. Have you guys ever heard of Ezekiel bread?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what Ezekiel bread is?
I do.
I've eaten it, but I don't know the origins of it.
Yeah. So
It's unleavened bread.
yeah, it comes from Ezekiel. Shockingly, right? And the whole idea is he's told by God to make this bread using these very particular ingredients. And then people are like, look, there's a bread recipe in the Bible. God told Ezekiel how to make bread. It's got to be the best bread. So people make it, and then they sell it as Ezekiel bread. You guys ever had Ezekiel bread?
Yeah, I used to buy it
Not
for a
that
while.
great.
It's not very good, but it is moderately higher protein and lower glycemic index than other breads.
It tastes
so-
like dog water is what
Like
it tastes
cardboard.
like. It is hard to eat bread. There's so many breads that are better and yummier and even more nutritionally dense than Ezekiel bread. I put Ezekiel bread in that same category, and maybe even worse than I put the Daniel fast, because in Ezekiel is basically like in a similar environment to Daniel. They're in Babylon, and some of the people, like he was one of the first to get taken from Babylon. The other people are still there in Jerusalem, and there are people around him believing God's still going to rescue Jerusalem, et cetera, et cetera. God's basically, through Ezekiel, telling the people, you're not going to get rescued. You guys have turned from me. I'm not going to protect you from the consequences of your own actions because of the terrible things you've done, et cetera, et cetera. And so he says, all right, Ezekiel, I'm going to give you all these little, like, it's like play acts is what it's called, when he's doing these things, like performative acts to give an image of what God is going to do or what the fate of Jerusalem is going to be, and so on and so forth. And one of them is this bread, where he says, I want you to make bread, but I want you to make it using a bunch of ingredients that you'd never want to make bread with. Ingredients that you'd only use if you had none of the good stuff. So it's like very explicitly subpar. And then God says, then I want you to bake it over human crap that you light on fire. Because that is going to be how it's going to be in Jerusalem. They're not going to be able to win this battle. I'm not going to protect them from the consequences of their actions because I've warned them for hundreds and hundreds of years. The people there are going to be making bread with like the dredge materials, and they're going to be baking it over their own crap. That's how bad it's going to be. And then we took that and we made bread out of it. But we're like,
let's put this in the grocery
bread
stores.
yeah.
God's literally like, this is the worst bread recipe you've that's ever been made.
Yeah.
And then we're like, wow, cool.
Yeah.
A recipe from the Bible.
Here's the thing. I don't think you can call it Ezekiel bread if you're not baking it over your own poop. I think you're taking all the
hidden ingredient.
acceptable parts. The secret sauce is the human excrement. That might have been too far. I apologize.
And this is what you come to the Easy Podcast for.
That's right.
It's live. It's out there now.
We're
You
live.
can't take it back.
It's here.
You can't take it back.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say, for those reasons, it's just a practice of reading something in the Bible and then making no attempt to understand why it's there, or making very little attempt. I think Ezekiel bread is a worse offender than the Daniel fast, because at least with the Daniel fast, I could see how you could interpret it that way. I think it's the wrong interpretation, but I could see how you could get there. With Ezekiel, you just didn't try to read the book at all. You just saw a bread recipe and then just plucked that right out. So
I'm going to be honest, guys. I ate
Overrated.
Ezekiel bread for quite some time. Like,
Nice.
It was like a year or
It's
two
the
or
Christian
something like
thing
that.
to do.
Yeah.
that's right.
And I did
The
it
Lord's
because
bread. The Lord's
it said
chips.
that it was better for you. I don't know.
It's the Lord's
internet did
chips. I have had diarrhea since Easter's. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Okay. So I think we're all agreed that Ezekiel bread and the Daniel fast are overrated. Overrated. Okay. Love languages. Here's our second topic. Love languages.
I think it's underrated. I think that the love languages has an underlying principle that different people both give love and receive love in different ways. And sometimes those giving and receiving can be different for that individual. And I think taking the time to be intentional about identifying that, and sometimes it has a lot to do with their environment, the context of their childhood, or their relationship with their parents. There can be all kinds of things that tie into it, but it's the principle of, hey, if I'm talking about my marriage, or even if I'm talking about friendships, relationships that I actually want to invest in, I am taking the time to identify what is true for them, or what works for them, instead of just assuming, oh, my way is the right way and the only way, and if they don't understand what I'm doing, well, then that's on them. Like there's a self-sacrificing that is inherent in the idea of love languages that I think is very not only biblical and Christian, but a very strong description of what works best in reality in actual relationships to be healthy and functional.
Yeah, I'm gonna I don't want to say it's overrated because I think it's good, so I'm gonna say underrated. And I'll like the whole love languages thing. I feel like that was a very like early 2000s as opposed to like maybe the Enneagram type stuff,
Which we're going to. We're going to the Enneagram.
Yeah, it feels like in the same vein. But I mean, just looking at them, for context for the listeners out there, words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. So what is that, five of them? And, I definitely like look at them and I think like all of them are good. None of them are bad,
Absolutely.
And seeking to understand specifically your spouse is a really good thing. I definitely like resonate with more of those than others. And so I think it's underrated. I think it's a good thing. I think everybody should do, honestly, all those things are on that list. Like you should do, maybe not receive gifts all the time, but you should be giving words of affirmation. You should be serving your spouse. You should be spending quality time with them. The gifts and physical touch maybe is like dependent on the individual, more so. But yeah, I think underrated. I'm going to say underrated. I think it's a good thing.
Okay. I'm going to say, at best, properly rated is what I'm going to say. Properly rated. Or maybe at most, or maybe even one step further, it could be overrated. I think, Canaan, I think you're right. I think that people have different personalities, right? And Tony, I agree with you as well. People have different pasts and different experiences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are some things that I think about Savannah. There are some things that communicate love to her more than other things. That's the basic idea of love languages. It's good. I've definitely had to learn that over time and learn to recognize in what way I need to show love to her. The places where I think it starts being really unhelpful is when you open the door to like going and taking a little test and answering certain questions to find what your love language is, like getting specific with it. I think you can open up the door into like a license to be lazy almost, where it's like, well, yeah, maybe you receive words of affirmation more, but that's my lowest score. And I'm not wired that way. I'm just not wired to give compliments. And so, like, I'm sorry, but that's who I am. I took the test. And that's my thing. I also think you can bleed into the Barnum effect. You guys ever heard of the Barnum effect? That's the idea where you take a test or you read a book about a personality trait and you go, oh, that's me. Because you recognize some parts that are like there's some overlap with your life. And then there's the desire to embrace all aspects of that personality type that you've connected with yourself. And then you start seeing things where there aren't things. And you start noticing trends where there aren't necessarily trends. Where you say, oh, that personality type likes that thing, then I do too. And that personality type isn't good with that, I'm just not good with that, et cetera, et cetera. That's the Barnum effect. I think you can bleed into that. You can end up drawing artificial boxes around things. And there was, I watched a video on this a couple years ago where there have been more studies done on just relationships and like value communication and love communication over the last handful of years since that book on love languages came out. And Canaan, I think you're you were spot on when you said like human beings need all of those things to some degree. Like human beings need physical touch, actually, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service. I think gifts is like in like its own little more specific box, actually, compared to the other four. But like human beings need all those dimensions to thrive in a relationship.
Well, and I feel like there's some left out too. You know, for instance, my favorite love language is being left alone, and it's not on the list.
Right.
So
it'd be an act of service for your wife to leave you alone.
Please keep my kids away from me just for a little while. It's my favorite love language.
Yeah, totally. Well, even like the things that you desire and need, I think can change over time. I think like your stress level can make it different, your age, the season of life you're in. And so if you lock yourself into like, I took a test when I was 20 and it said this. Like, that's how I receive love, and that's how I give love. I think you can, like, stick yourself in a box in a really unhelpful way. I think, well, we're also going to have some similar ideas popping up when we talk about other personality testing type things, like the Enneagram, in a few minutes here. But I'm going to say it is, I guess I'll be more reasonable. I'll say it's rated. There's some real benefit there, but I also think there's some really unhelpful parts that I think it's created some unhelpful things by people taking it really seriously or overly seriously. So, yes, we have you guys coming in at overrated. I came in at rated or underrated, somewhere around there. I guess
actually, I think I said underrated.
Oh, sorry. The other way around. You guys said underrated. I said it was rated or overrated. So it comes in at that. I guess we're, more or less consensus underrated. Let's switch over to something I think that might be a little more controversial. Boundaries and protecting my peace.
Oof.
This is language that's become super, super popular, super common. It's modern therapeutic language, right? But it's a sense of like, okay, I have a boundary for me, and you're infringing upon that boundary, so I'm going to push you away until you reach that line. Or this relationship or this thing is compromising my peace, so I'm going to remove myself from it or cut that thing out or that person out in order to protect my peace or the peace of my family or whatever else. I think this is a really tricky one, personally. So what do you guys think? Is that overrated in the sense that it's used in an unhealthy way, or is it underrated? We should be using it more.
It is a tough one. I come from like a pretty healthy family background. And so for me, it's really easy to say overrated, at least for me personally. And I'm like, I've never had to set what feels like crazy hard boundaries, except for, very practical, pragmatic, things. Like I work from home, and so I'm like, I have a boundary. Like, you got to knock on the door before you come in, and the door stays locked. So like, if you want to talk, knock on the door. My kids are homeschooled, so I have a boundary, right? So maybe from that perspective, things like that are a little bit more practical. I think what you're talking about is more on like the relational side, of like relationships and setting boundaries in relationships. I don't know. For me, I'm going to say overrated. I just think it's a little easier for me. Again, I my family history is very simple, and it feels very easy to relate with the people around me and my parents and stuff, and siblings, and so it doesn't feel like I need to set any hard boundaries or whatever. There's been no times in my life where I ever felt like I had to say, I have a boundary that you've crossed and I need you to stop crossing it. That's literally never happened. And maybe there's some people where I'm like, I like spending time with that person less than I like spending time with this other person because of how they interact. That's for me a thing, for sure. But I've never had to, quote unquote, set a boundary. So for that reason, I'm saying overrated.
Yeah, I'm going to come in with, I mean, you and I have the same family history. And we probably have a pretty similar arc in terms of life and relationships and so on and so forth. So I definitely relate with everything you're saying. I have never had to have this point where I'm like, I'm cutting you out of my life. Like, stop talking to me. I'm done talking to you. Leave me alone. You're hurting my peace or whatever else. That said, there's real validity to the idea of there can be a person that is causing so much chaos and damage in your life and your family's life that you have to say, I've got to create distance. There's validity there. There really is. The idea of protecting your peace, there's validity there. There is a point where you have to say there has to be a line where I can't give and sacrifice to the point that my life is in shambles or my family's life is in shambles. That's a classic work in ministry thing. I'm available all the time for everyone who needs me at all, and my family gets the last little piece of me or none of me, and there's no peace in the home and there's no peace in my life because it just like there is no line, there is no boundary, there's no attempt to protect your peace. So I get that. That said, if we were having this conversation 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have said underrated. But this is 2026. And it feels like everyone I know is now cutting people out of their lives. Like hitting this point where they say, that's it. And you're out. Yeah. And my parents are out and you're out and my siblings are out. And, this person who used to teach me is out. And this person, I saw them share some opinion on Facebook anymore. And we were friends, but now we're not friends anymore. You're out. And that didn't used to be as common. I feel like it used to be maybe underutilized to have a line and protect your peace. And now it feels like people are, their fingers are on the trigger and they're just waiting for a reason. And so I'm going to have to say overrated for where we're at in culture in terms of like again, this is Christian trends specifically. Okay. Things that have become growing or things that have grown in the Christian sphere. This has become really, really, really common in Christian spheres. People saying, like, Jesus set boundaries, so my boundary is this, and now you're out of my life, and you're out of my life, and you're out of my life. Here's my peace, and Jesus also protected his peace. Like, both those things are true. And therefore, I feel unpeaceful thinking about you or talking to you or being around you or whatever else. So now you're out of my life. Stay away from me. My peace is that important. I think this is so difficult because there's validity to the idea, but can you become so fixated on the idea of a boundary, on the idea of protecting your peace, that it can become an idol? Yeah, I really think it can. And I think it has in a lot of ways. And again, I'm not someone that's had a really, really terrible, like my parents, they're loving and they're kind, they're great. I haven't had this moment where I've had to make this super hard decision for my family. So I'm not saying there's no validity or there's never a reason. There is. And I think, again, if we were having this conversation like a decade ago, 15 years ago, I would have said it's underrated. People need to take this more seriously. But in 2026, man, it feels like if you haven't had someone cut you out, like, I guess you don't know enough people, because people do that all the time. So I'm going to say right now, overrated.
Yeah. Yeah, Nate, you're hitting on some things that I strongly agree with. Like the polarization of society and social media feeds into this big time. It really does. Like you said, people are just waiting with their finger on the trigger, ready to pull it. Like, oh, you believe this thing that I don't believe? Oh, well, sorry. Like if I mean, let's just be direct. Like if we're talking about politics, and if someone is maybe they voted for Trump and someone else hates Trump, and they make it very clear, look, if you voted for Trump, I don't even understand how you can be blah 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 blah. Go ahead and do yourself a favor and remove me from your friend list, right? And I can understand where that motivation comes from because they so strongly believe in what they believe. And so I don't discount that. I'm not saying these people are terrible people. But yes, the tendency, the willingness to jump to that extreme, it is very worrisome. It is a very big problem. I think it's very evident in politics. I think it's very evident in religion. I think it's very evident in any type of topic where there can be potential conflict because, God forbid, different people view life differently. All right?
I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a moment because I know we talked a lot about like relational boundaries and the idea of cutting people out or whatever, but I have had to set some other types of boundaries in my life with extended family and things like that before, where it was actually if we're going to do this regularly, if we're going to relate regularly, it's got to look a certain way, you know what I mean? And especially you guys,
right.
or Nate, probably you can relate more with your kids, right? Like you set certain boundaries, like this is where you're going to interact with my kids and how you're going to interact with my kids, it's an entirely different type of like boundary situation that we're talking about there. But there is a need for that, especially in dysfunctional family relationships or friend relationships. And you're like, hey, look, there's some crossed lines here that we got to sort this out. I just think especially, as it relates to like, cutting people out and stuff. I don't know. I don't get that quite as much. And I've never had to deal with it. I've never had to do it on my own, so I don't get that. And politically, man, that stuff just bothers me because I'm like, can we not have different opinions? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's just a difference of opinion, Right. And I like to sit at the table with people who have different opinions and talk about them. I think there's so much importance to that of like being able to have conversations where we come up on completely different sides of the coin. Even this group here, where I'd like, you may have a completely different opinion and I'd like to hear it. And we've lost the ability to disagree with people in an amicable way. You know what I mean? And still be friends.
Especially as Christians. Big time. I think that's one of the biggest blunders that a Christian can do is cut people off and quite frankly judge people in such a way that you no longer have any influence or impact or value in another person's life whatsoever. Yeah. I think that the church as a whole in the modern day has done a lot of good things, but the mistakes that they have made, the foundation of those mistakes comes from you have been so holier than thou, are so stuck in your ways, even no matter what those ways are, that you refuse to come to the table with someone who is different than you. Like it's not what Jesus did. Like, there was boundaries being set. And so this is, Canaan, what you were saying, I also agree with completely. Like that's exactly where I was going with this, is if we were talking about the word boundaries for myself, I say it is very overrated, very overrated. But I would add a qualifier when I think about boundaries, and I would say healthy boundaries. Once more, talking about not going from an extreme to an extreme. I think healthy boundaries are underrated. I think understanding that a healthy boundary, doesn't mean cutting someone out of your life. It doesn't mean protecting your peace to the degree that you are so selfish that you only care about what's yours and what's you and yours, and who cares about the them that's out there. like if you think of a country, if you think of America and Mexico, we share a boundary. We are neighbors. We are right next to each other. And if we completely cut out our neighbor, how are we ever going to have any kind of loving impact or influence? Because we do believe that there is truth out there. We do believe that there's reality. We should be able to accept everyone's opinions, but if you think that you're going to have any impact on someone else's opinion with what you think may be the truth, but you won't even listen to what they think they think it may be the truth, no one cares about what you have to say unless they know that you actually care. And so, yeah, I think boundaries are overrated. I think that there needs to be way more of an understanding of what a healthy boundary looks like, because there are circumstances that call for healthy boundaries. And a lot of people, like you said, Nate, personality types especially, that can fall prey to this. It's the whole reason why pastor kids and missionary kids, PKs and MKs, have become somewhat of a Christian trope. Being you two are PKs yourselves, it's because there isn't anything left to give to someone, to get their family, because they didn't set those healthy boundaries, like you said, Nate.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a whole, it is an epidemic, and I wish that we could pull in boundaries from this. I get to hold up this shield that blocks out the rest of the world, and instead recognizing, no, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And very rarely should you ever send the nuclear tactical option of, I had to excommunicate you from my life completely.
Yeah, I think this is where the conversation's so hard for me, because you're like boundaries, like, no, not the extreme, but healthy boundaries, good. It's like, yes, totally. But it's in the where the healthy boundary is, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can take that concept of, yes, we should have healthy boundaries. And Canaan, you were saying, play devil's advocate. And yes, this is like, you should draw lines to protect your family and protect your kids and so on and so forth. Absolutely. So where does that healthy boundary become an unhealthy boundary that effectively is an idol of, I never have to be uncomfortable. I never have to be challenged. I never have to have someone disagree with me. Somebody can't have a different political view than me. Somebody can't like a different sports team than me. It's like, at what point do you say that's silly? And I think where we're at in Christian culture is the point where that silly is way farther than it should be.
Absolutely.
I think we've pushed the acceptable boundaries way over here. And I think there's a healthy spot, right? Where that is, I think, is subject to discussion. But yeah, I think for me, it's overrated for where we're at right now in the year of our Lord 2026. That was a hard one.
With that being said, we're running shorter on time, so we might want to speed up, right?
Yeah. So let's throw it out. I said we were going to talk about the Enneagram. Let's talk about the Enneagram. Enneagram and personality tests in general.
Yeah, those are the same thing in my mind.
Yep.
To be quick, short and sweet, I'm not going to say that there's no value here, because once more, when I'm talking about the love languages, there is some level of an underlying principle where you are hopefully using this tool to learn more about someone else, discover more about someone else, and prefer someone else when maybe you would just otherwise would have only been you. And so I think that there is value here. I don't discount it. It's not like a huge red flag if someone very like super subscribes to it. But I do think it's overrated personally. I think that it's been used to the nth degree to kind of like zodiac horoscope, like there's so many easy ways of, well, it's because I'm a Scorpio that I do X, Y, and Z. Don't hang out with the Libras. Don't, and I know it's not as like cringe as horoscope, but it can fall into that trope, unfortunately. And I do see that more often than I would like. So I think there's value, but I think it's overrated. Unless you're talking about Brandon Sanderson and the different radiant orders, because that is very underrated.
Oh, boy. Here we go. Let me throw that one out there, too, Tony. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The radiant orders.
That's my radiant order right there.
I don't have my flag
Go over it again, Nate. Explain it to me one more time.
Yes. The Enneagram is it's a personality test that became really popular in the last 10 years or so. But really like 6 or 7 years or so. And it's like your personality is one of nine archetypes. And, like there was also the Myers-Briggs that was really popular.
And Myers-Briggs is very good. Like, make no mistake about it. It's very useful, even in the professional workspace, to know the type of people that you're interacting with. Very similar to the love languages. That's why I said there's value here, but yeah. I see it abused.
I think I'll say overrated. And I had a guy one time. I was going through a interview process, and I'd made it like 3 interviews in. And it was for a very specific role at this company. And the last step was taking a personality test. And I took it, and I did not get hired based on the results of that personality test. And I was like, not to knock the guy's business at all, but I was just like, man, that seems like placing maybe a little bit too much weight on the results of a test, a personality test specifically. Yeah. I think it's maybe good, to your point, Tony, to help you understand different people. Mm-hmm. I think that can be helpful, to try to understand the people around you and maybe even understand yourself a little bit better. I just know for sure from based on other people and how they've talked about it, people put a lot of weight, and it almost allows them to lean into whatever they define themselves at, or or whatever the personality test defines them as. They're like, this is me now, and I'm just going to act in this way because I know that this is what the test tells me. And so I think there is some value there. Generally, I just think it's overrated. There's just so much. People are so complex that it's really hard to stick yourself into this is who I am. In fact, I don't think we should be doing that. I don't think we should just be saying, this is who I am. And I'm always going to be this way. Yeah. We change. We grow as human beings. Somebody who sucks at communication or sucks at a certain thing can get better. You know what I mean? Yeah, God's gifted you in a certain way, and you might have you might be good at certain things and bad at other things more naturally. But I think it just generally people lean into whatever it's telling them, and I don't think that's a great thing overall. So I'm going to say overrated.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. And this one's tough for me because I spent a lot of time in like Myers-Briggs stuff, and I spent a lot of time in Enneagram stuff in terms of just like reading up on them and trying to understand them and that kind of thing. I think it's fascinating. I think it's always really interesting. Yeah. It's always really fun. Yes. I'll say Myers-Briggs is like it's like a 7 out of 10 overrated. In terms of 10 out of 10 is the most overrated thing, it's pretty overrated. I do think it's helpful to get a ballpark sense of somebody in terms of how to work with someone else. But, Canaan, to your point, once Savannah was interviewing with a doctor who was trying to decide if he wanted to take her on as a patient. And he had her take a personality test. And it came out where he's like, okay, I've looked at your personality test, and I don't think you're even going to do the things I tell you to do.
Wow, that blows my mind.
Like, based on her personality test. Wow. He's like, I don't know if I can take you on as a patient because I don't have confidence that if I tell you to do something, you're actually going to do it. And she was like, it's just a personality test. Of course I'll do it. Yeah. So that's lame. Like that's taking it way, way, way too seriously. Because I agree. I think we change as people. I think your personality should evolve. Hopefully not devolve, but it changes. It's going to move. Now, I actually think the Enneagram can be more useful as a tool for growth if it's used in the right way. Nice. And I don't think it's a guarantee that it's used in the right, or it will be used in the right way. I think a ton of people that I've seen use it for the exact same thing, where they say, this is me. I'm a number 3. I'm a number 7. And that's who I am. and that helps me understand who I am and why I am the way I am. But that is who I am, and that's just who it. Like that's how God made me. That's how I was born, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then it becomes the same thing as the love language deal, where it's a license to be lazy. It's a license to not have to ever change or ever be challenged. It's like Enneagram number 7 is like they like conflict. They like conflicting opinions and like really meeting people by disagreeing with them and that sort of thing. And then it's
that's
like
just how I am. That's who
just how
I am.
I'm a jerk. I just that's who I am. I was born. God made me this way. Yeah. Right. And you also have to accept it or you don't love me. That's, I think, super, super cancerous. Talk about cancerous ideology. That's that. However, like I think it was getting really popular and I was pretty anti Myers-Briggs. And so I was like, I'm going to do a deep dive into this because a lot of my friends were getting really into the Enneagram. And so I read I read a bunch of material on it. I read the book by Ian Cron, The Road Back to You, all that stuff. And I think there can be a lot of benefit and validity to it because at its base theory, the idea is not who did God make you to be? It's what was the damage done to you?
Yeah, I've heard that.
And then how has that shaped you? Because the damage done to you shapes you in good ways and bad. Like you learn some strengths from your pain. But you also learn a lot of crap and you believe a lot of lies. So at the fundamental idea, it's what kind of lies did you believe about yourself and the world from your childhood, from your experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you identify those things and say, this is who I am now because of those experiences, how can you start to heal? And I think the whole concept at the deepest layer, the Enneagram is less about saying this is who I am and more about saying, how can I stop being this way?
Yeah, that's really good.
If used in that way, then I think that's a home frickin' run. Like that's
absolutely
amazing. As a tool to identify the lies that you believe, like the deep-seated like deceptions about yourself and reality that you've bought into, that's amazing. That's great. Love it. However, I almost never see it talked about that way.
I was going to say, I've never heard anybody who talks about it talk about it in that way.
Yeah, I've looked into it a little bit too, Nate, and when I discovered the underlying like that, I was like, wow, that's cool. Yeah. But yeah, no one ever talks about it that way.
Yeah, and I've had I'm not going to say arguments. I've had discussions with other Christians who are like, no. Like you're made to be your number. And I'm like, no, you're your number because of damage done to you. Like it's bad to be your number. Stop being that way. But people want to gravitate to an identity. And that's just like, that's a thing. People want identity. They want to have like, I'm a this. I'm going to find my fellow this and birds of a feather and so on and so forth. You can talk about identity politics all day long because people love to gravitate to an identity. So I'm going to say, in theory, the Enneagram is great.
Yeah.
In practice, I've almost never seen it used in a super healthy way. I've almost always seen it used as a way of justifying, this is me. I'm just me. This is who I am. I apologize for nothing. God made me this way, because then we attach it to Christianity and design and so on and so forth, and that can get even more cancerous. So I'm going to say the Myers-Briggs is worse because it makes no attempt of saying you are this way because of damage. However, I feel like the Enneagram ends up at the same conclusion so much of the time for so many people. So unfortunately overrated for me as well.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. People have a tendency to enjoy being able to identify what they lump into, what group they are. So that leads me to my next very, very important question. What Harry Potter house are you guys?
Oh, you already know. You already know I'm Gryffindor.
I'm a Hufflepuff.
Man. I'm straight up Slytherin.
You're a Slytherin?
I could be Gryffindor, but I'm more Slytherin.
Wow. We did I've been reading Harry Potter to my kids very slowly over the course of their childhood. We're only on book 4 because I waited, like we'd finished the first book. I'm like, okay, you guys aren't ready for the next one until like a year from now. I'll age up a little bit. And then I read them the second one, read them the third one. They're not allowed to watch the movies until we read the books, but I've been reading the fourth one to them. And yeah, they and their cousins are all wanting to do, what house are you? Take the test, and so on and so forth.
That's funny.
We love having an identity, don't we?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I think unless we can find like a really, really fast one, we might be roughly out of time here.
I think so. Any quick ones left? Otherwise,
I can throw out one more. I don't know if it's a quick one. This has been a popular one for a long time, and it's still popular in Christian spheres.
I'm gonna hate it.
Finding a word for the year. A single thematic word.
All right, I'm gonna say, I'll preface it with this: I do it every year. I do it every year. Okay. And I actually really like it. It's a great opportunity for me to stop and reflect and spend time in prayer, meditation, like, and ask the question, hey, what should this year look like for my family and me? And so I like it. I'm going to say underrated. I haven't heard enough people do it, actually. I think it's been good. And I'll say this, anecdotally, every year it seems to have hit. Maybe that's because it's on your mind or whatever, and you tend to pick out what's already on your mind, right? I hate the word manifesting, by the way. Can we not use that word? It's a terrible word. But I like it. I think it's a good thing. I think more people should reflect about making plans in their life, you know what I mean? And also spending time in prayer, meditating about what their future should look like. I'm going to say underrated.
I'm going to say overrated because none of you that do this remember it past February 15th.
And just like everything else you did to on New Year's Day.
It's a word that looks great on your journal cover, and you never think about it again. It's a Christian New Year's resolution, and it's overrated. Yeah, Canaan, I see the value in everything you're saying, and I do think that any chance we have to take a step back and say, how have I been living? What should I be doing? As Christians, God, what should this next season look like?
Did you guys hear that lightning? I'm sorry.
That's lightning?
I didn't know what
lightning,
it was.
and
I
it
thought
was
like a pot
it was
fell
like
in your kitchen.
It was like right there.
Holy
so
cow.
I may have to shut down here in a moment, but
Wow.
Well,
All
we're almost done.
We're wrapping up. Yeah, I'm gonna say any chance you have to say, God, what should this season look like? I think it's like take the chance, like take that opportunity. It's great. I was just able to have a couple days to step away from everything and really just say, what am I doing? What should I be doing? So on and so forth. If you want to attach a word to that, okay. I think you might be limiting God's creative ability to speak to you by saying, I need a word. I need one word. And the word is shift. The word is focus, grace. Like, I think God probably has a lot more to say to you than a word.
He wants those things anyway.
Always. But I'm not going to say just completely overrated, waste of time. I think there's value there. I think it's probably overrated to try to find a word for the year. A year is a really long time to just take one word. Like, get a word for the month, Get a word for this week. But even better, get a sentence from God every now and again. So I'm being nitpicky. I am. I'm being nitpicky. But overall, I think it's just right on the edge of like, it might be overrated to find a word for this whole year. Not to say there's no value, but that's where I'm at. Tony, bring us home.
Yeah, I immediately repel against things that can come off as very Christianese and very
Getting triggered over there.
Yeah, I'm like, it's like, man, these weird Christians over there. It's like, man, just be normal. Like, don't. No, Canaan, I'm talking to you, actually. Just be normal.
Just be normal. Wear a dress, Tony.
Exactly.
Just be normal.
But no, yeah, it all comes down to internal versus external for me. It's that idea, that principle that if this is something that like you are taking time, then it's actually impacting your decisions. It's actually, like a heart thing. It's not just something you're doing so that you can show people that you're such a good Christian on your forehead. That's where most times when I say something's overrated, it's because there's some level of abuse that's taking place, whatever overtly or not. And so, I mean, I just think that this can fall into the cringe Christianese, and I hate stuff like that. I think that the more that society gets exposed to cringe Christianese, the more they become inoculated against any potential influence that we may have in a healthy way. So, overrated. Sorry. It's not bad, but it's overrated.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. It looks like Tony and I have come in on Tony's very overrated. I'm right on the edge. Canaan was underrated. Looks like we're going to balance out to just over the edge of overrated. Okay, look, we're fresh out of time. We've had a 2-hour live stream here. This was the second hour where we're knocking out this topic. It was good. It was fun.
Thank you for joining us, even with technical difficulties to some degree. We really appreciate it. And yeah, this is going to be happening, like I've said before, from now on. So if you do normally are catching us just in your car or where you're working out, listening to us audio, I want to encourage you, challenge you, exhort you to come and try our live stream at one point. These will in the future become more consistent as far as time, specific time zone time slot. Thank you. But we're just happy to be able to be doing this with each other and with you guys.
Yes, sir. Tony, Canaan, as always, thank you guys for joining me. And to all of you, until next time, take it easy.